Okay.
Yeah.
And we're all set to go.
Yeah.
Just to start out, we have some paperwork here, and it's just consent forms that we can use the interview for our documentary and for the field school for the projects. There's no risks at all. Benefits for doing the interview is just to allow the public to understand Milwaukee a bit better through small stories, and we can either capture this verbally, or you can sign one of these sheets here as consent. It's up to you.
I'm not, it's just, you have my consent.
Okay, great.
No paranoia or anything like that.
That's great. That's just a small part of the beginning of the interview that we need to get through. If you could just start out by stating your name.
I'm BethChapman.
And give us maybe a little bit of history of how you're associated with the villa.
Oh, well, I've always come from a gardening background of English heritage and gardens. So when I came to Milwaukee in 1956, late 56, I joined the Milwaukee Art Museum Garden Club. So I was always involved in gardening. That was why I eventually got involved with the Villa Terrace, because of the garden club. The Milwaukee Art Museum decorative arts collection was housed at Villa Terrace. And then when they built the Kaler addition to the Milwaukee Art Museum removed their decorative arts and put it in the Kaler addition. But while the 10 years or so they were at Villa Terrace with the decorative arts, my garden club got very involved with the gardens at Villa Terrace, because they were just no one was caring for them. The Milwaukee County was mowing. That's about it. So when the art museum moved in with their decorative arts, then my garden club, Milwaukee Art Museum Garden Club, really got into the gardens at the villa and worked there for many, many years.
Could you maybe give us some detail of what the gardens looked like when you
Well,
were
they were designed by...
when you got there, when they were in disrepair?
Yes, they were. They had no maintenance. And so we tried to do the best we could with what they had. And we'd removed the driveway garden. We had to put all new plantings in the driveway garden. And then we had to do the gardens below the terrace. We made a big mistake. We put in an English garden. And so later on, when we redid the gardens, when the Friends of Villa Terrace re-landscaped, we've learned we had done the wrong thing. We had to remove our English-style garden and put the Italianate garden, which was nothing. The Italians would never have decorated that area below the terrace. That would have been an entertainment area. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting.
Yeah.
So you were more so with the English garden was sort of close to what the Italian garden is
yes,
now.
they wouldn't have had flowers or, the English perennial garden. No way.
What at the time when you were with the garden club, what did the Villa Terrace mean to you to work on it? Was this a staple of the water tower
Water.
community?
No.
Did you know much about the villa?
No, I didn't. Mrs. Smith took me through. I went through the villa before the Milwaukee County took it over. And a lot of my friends used to be invited to the Villa Terrace because Mrs. Smith loved to entertain. And she always had big holiday parties. And, well, another thing, she would collect all the Christmas trees from the neighborhood and have her children get all the Christmas trees and cut them up for mulch with her gardens. So she wasn't interested in gardening to that extent. I always thought that was amusing. But she used to have lovely parties in the Great Hall, and there was no electricity in the Great Hall. It was all lit by candlelight. All the sconces had candles, and the chandeliers had candles, which I thought was absolutely remarkable, but she loved that look for her parties in the Great Hall. She was quite a lady.
Could you, do you have any memories of one of those parties that you
No,
had?
I didn't live here.
You, okay.
See, I wasn't part
So
of that.
you
So
were
my
told-
friends were,
I see.
yeah, my friends were at her parties. She did a lot of entertainment. Well, she had a large family
Okay.
and a wealthy husband.
Mm-hmm.
That helps.
So when you came in, was it 56 that you?
Yes, I
you
came in
came?
'56.
Did the Smiths still own the Villa Terrace at that time?
No, it was just a private
It
home
was
then.
private. Okay.
So it wasn't until 1966 that the Smiths arranged to give it to Milwaukee County. Essentially, it was a white elephant. This is maybe shouldn't be said, but see, she had remarried and was living in the East, and she couldn't get anyone to live there rent-free. You know why? Heating. That structure, it has all outside walls. My husband was in that industry, and he could never understand why anybody would build an Italian villa in this climate, because every room had at least 2 or more outside walls, and it was very costly to heat the building. So, okay, you live there rent-free, but you have to pay the heating bill. So that was part of why they had to give it. It was really a white elephant. Yeah.
How about after the gardens were redone and
Well, they weren't redone until later years, until the Friends of Villa Terrace.
okay.
And we were created about 1990. We were formed. And when I was president, that was the first project I wanted to take on, was the restoration of the gardens. We had to remove, because the maple trees were diseased, very diseased. There was an alley of maple that were bleached or boxed, but the county stopped boxing them, and they became very diseased, so all of them had to be removed. So we had to go back to ground zero. Yes.
And how much did you have? How much effort did you put into the beginning plannings and
Oh,
and
well,
putting it all
raising money,
together?
we had to raise like $2 million. And we had a couple that helped us with it, Mary and Bob Uncle, and they lived across the street. In fact, I can't say his name now. One of the wealthy young men in town owns that home. And he then moved into the Van Dyke home, which is right across the street. He lives in that home. But and uncles lived there, so Mary Uncle, we paid her to start it, and then we paid her husband, and they were just a fantastic couple in helping to raise the money and in the design of the garden. He supervised all the design, the building of the garden. Dennis Bittner, the landscape architect, did the design for us and gotten it straight away about Italian gardens and not English gardens.
Yeah, we had the opportunity to interview Dennis yesterday.
Oh, you
so
did?
we had a
Yeah, I've
very
known
nice
him, worked
tour.
with him for years. When he was just a new kid on the block, I was chairing one of the Symphony Show House gardens. So he did one of the early gardens on Lake Drive for me.
That's great. Do you have any stories with you and Dennis? Maybe
What?
Stories of
Oh
you
yes,
and
we go
Dennis?
back for years and years.
Could you maybe tell us one of those stories so we can have a connection between?
Well,
the
no,
people who
other
live
than
in-
he has a lovely garden in Glendale, just a lovely woodland garden, and that was always my garden in Fox Point. I lived in Fox Point in Woodlands, and always maintained a woodland garden. I was close to the Audubon Nature Center, so I had a great diversity of trees, and it was really a unique property. So, but that's the same thing Dennis has done there in Glendale with his garden. Yeah.
nice. How about if we talk maybe a bit about all the work that got put into cleaning up the gardens before they got redesigned?
Well, we had to bring in big, heavy equipment to remove all those trees in the alley, you know, and then we had to raise the garden. I'm sure Dennis told you about having to raise it 3 or 4 inches because it was much lower than, it's still lower than Lincoln Memorial Drive. See, so it's it's a wet garden. People aren't aware of that. As they drive down Lincoln Memorial Drive, they don't realize that that's all a wet garden. And so we had to have things that could have wet feet. And that Dennis in his selection had to pick out shrubs and trees, things that could tolerate wet feet. And we had to put in a drainage system too. So there's a lot of engineering in that.
Mm-hmm. Do you have an idea of how the garden looked originally compared to what it is now? And is there a good comparison of difference, or are they quite comparable?
But the highlight, of course, is the water staircase. And that's what the Villa Chacona has. And I've seen quite a few water staircases in the United States, but none of them compare with this water staircase. It's just outstanding. But we've had to spend a lot of money to have it re-caulked and so on this year. It was leaking.
That's a great view from Lincoln Memorial looking up.
Oh, it is. We can't afford the fiber optics. When we were there the first year, we had fiber optics in the water staircase, so you drive by at night and you could see it look like water coming down the staircase. But I don't think we just have sort of spotlights on it now. But I just love that ripple look of the fiber optics on the water staircase.
I asked Dennis a bit about this, and the Italianate gardens, Roman gardens, were sort of a buffer between the wild land and the land of the city, and it showed a prominence of the people and culture, and also was protection from the wild.
Yes.
Do you see any part of the villa sort of showing that?
Yeah, we have all that parkland. We used to be pretty wild. Now, one thing about it, when we restored the Villa Terrace Garden, the Milwaukee County got into beautifying Lincoln Memorial Drive. They really started to enhance it. And they needed that spur. In fact, they even restored the wall on Terrace Avenue, that wall with the Kalnick fence and ironwork was deteriorated, and they came in and restored that. They put $1.5 million into that wall. So I think we really inspired the county to do something about it. And then they restored the garden there by Bartolotta's, you know, that staircase that comes down. They restored that and replanted that, and they started to do something about beautifying Lincoln Memorial Drive. And it is a beautiful drive. So I feel that we got them going. Yeah.
It sounds like there was a bit of reluctance from the city in the early
years.
Well,
they were indifferent to it. And I think once we did this, then they realized how important it was. So they really did beautify it and made improvements in the drive. And that's a highlight of Milwaukee, to take Lincoln Memorial Drive and Lake Drive. It's a fantastic drive for tourists or people that come to the city. Yeah.
Do you think of the villa even today as being the sort of center of the neighborhood?
Well,
or was it in the past?
Well, of course, the university is the center of the neighborhood, so you have to face that. But I think it's one of the highlights, and the same goes for the lighthouse. I think those are both historic. And we have the advantage of the villa being in a neighborhood of beautiful homes. So it's not just the villa, it's the other, it's the Vogel home, not Van, I said Van Dyke, it's the Vogel home, it's across the street from the Villa Terrace, and that's a beautiful mansion that's been restored. Yeah.
It sounds like the community and people that live close within the neighborhood had a lot to do with the beautification that was going around.
Not necessarily. No, we always had the support of, terrible, I can't say his name, the contractor that lived in the Vogel home, and he restored that home, and he was always supportive of the villa. In fact, he sat on our board for a while, and that is, he heads that company that did the lakefront. What is his name? I'm sorry, I can't say his name now. All I can think is Chris Abley, not Chris, Joanna, his wife. Ugh, anyway, I'm sorry. I apologize. I can't come up with his name. But he heads that architectural firm from Madison,
Okay.
that Freevold. I'm sorry, I can't give you that name.
We can easily look up. You've given us enough information.
Yes, he lived across the street and was very supportive. And then we should go into Herbie's, the sculpture. That's part of the villa history.
Sure, would you like to talk
Yes.
a bit about that?
Yes, Tracy Atkinson was director of the Milwaukee Art Museum at that time, and he wanted a sculpture in that center of that courtyard. And because they had a big urn, a huge concrete urn, the water spilled over the urn and came down into the pool. And then that water went into Lake Michigan. There was no recycling of that water. So he wanted to sculpture it. We couldn't have done it because it had not been declared a historic landmark. See, it would have been forbidden because but we were able to remove that urn, and then our garden club, Tracy Atkinson, wanted us to acquire a sculpture. So we raised $16,000. That was something for a garden club to do in 1966 and 67, to raise that much money. We raised more money than the Friends of Art did. And, but Tracy looked for a piece of classical sculpture. We couldn't find one. And my sister was a New York dealer at that time. She was looking for us too. Finally, one came available. It had been in upstate New York for many, many years. And it was on loan to Williams College. Well, the family wanted the money. So they put it on the market from that Royal Athena Gallery in New York. So then we bought it right away. I think it was about $10,000 or so. But Bob Ornst, the contractor, paid for the lifting it over the gate, over the shipping, and he paid for that. And our garden club, then we had to elevate the sculpture because it was too low where the pedestal had. So Tracy and I got together one day and we designed that bronze pedestal fountain. Originally, with the garden club was having just jets of water. Well, I said, no way. So I said I wanted to have that lion's head. And so we went to Degner Metalcraft. That was, it's long gone out of business, but that was the Metalcraft. And they had the form, the lion's head, for the four sides of the pedestal. And Degner Metalcraft made the bronze pedestal, which was a major item to have that with the four lion's head with spouting the water. But I think it's a perfect way for Hermes. But we ran into trouble because some of the Milwaukee ladies were offended with Hermes. He should be Mercury. In the Italian, he would have been Mercury for an Italian garden. But you see, the Italians were just like we are. It was a little tonier to have the Greek name Hermes. And he's documented. We couldn't call him Mercury because he's in literature and documented as Hermes. So we have that, it's called the Mercury Courtyard. But Hermes, not Mercury, is standing in that courtyard. But some of the ladies were offended by the sculpture. So we ran into a little bit of trouble, but I still knew we were doing the right thing.
Yeah, it's very beautiful when you walk into the
Yes, so
courtyard.
at least I stopped those jets of water just going.
It seems like it was meant to be there.
Yeah, I know.
It's
But anyway,
very-
Tracy and I sat and sketched this thing out, and Degner Metalcraft made it for us.
With the lion heads, was that something that you wanted to incorporate with?
Yeah, yes, and
scuppers?
Degner Metalcraft had the form, the perfect form, right there. So that was, we really lucked out.
Water is a large feature throughout the villa.
Yes.
From the view to the lake.
Yes, well, we took care of that when we put this in, but then we put in a recycling system. So the water didn't drain off into Lake Michigan as that urn had always done. And so we could recycle the water.
Do you, could you go into more detail about that? We haven't heard much about the recycling of the water. And,
Yeah, well, we had to pay for, our garden club had to pay for all that replumbing, rewiring, and so on, so that the water then could be recycled within the pedestal, you know.
So the water that's in the front courtyard, is that connected to the same flow of water that goes down the steps? Or
Well, yeah, they're all water, sure, but it's not connected, no, but our water stays right there in the fountain,
in the fountain?
Yeah,
Okay. I see.
whereas before it went drained away.
So it was connected to the system where the rain falls down into the corners of the garden. Is that?
Well, I don't know, they have city water, don't they? I would think they had just city water.
Yeah, there's a collection from the gutters around the courtyard, and
No.
then they flow.
Oh, yeah,
into
but
the
they,
courtyard.
yes, they go into, yes, we put
Into
in,
the
we did a drain system, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But we had quite an unveiling of Hermes. And I remember Governor Knowles even came for our dedication.
How,
Yeah.
how was that?
And
Could you
Dorothy-
describe the unveiling and
Yeah,
the party that?
Yeah, one of my friends made the shroud, and I pulled the cord, and this shroud went up, and there was Hermes in all of his glory.
And was there?
And that was actually, I think that was the first classical sculpture in Milwaukee. I don't think they had a classical sculpture. See, it has a Roman torso. And then it's attributed to Bernini, the Restoration. In the 17th century, they dig these torsos up, and then they'd add the arms and legs and so on. Yeah. But he's documented in the literature. So that was, I was very proud of our garden club doing that. Yeah. But there are a lot of things given to the villa. We've been so blessed with nice gifts made to it. But we can always accept gifts. That's one of the problems with the Charles Alice Art Museum. They can't add to their collection. That's all Alice work. But see, the Villa Terrace can accept gifts. We're always looking for them, and plus money. All right, I have some more things here. Oh, we raised money by flower shows. We'd have flower shows at the Villa Terrace. that would have large attendance. Our members would make floral arrangements through the villa, and then we'd fix table settings. And Delphine was in the collector's corner, and they did that sort of thing too, to raise money.
Earlier you mentioned meeting Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
And walking through the villa with her.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What was that experience like?
Yeah, well, she just showed us the different rooms, and it was really interesting. We couldn't keep her furniture because the Great Hall has to be available for entertainment and such, but she had some interesting Italianate chairs and that, but we couldn't, I think they're still stored in the basement, never could use them. And one time we did have a large oriental rug in the Great Hall, but that couldn't be used because it was in the way, so we had to lift that up. So we have to keep, and then of course there's the fire. You heard about the fire.
Could you tell us a bit about the
Yeah,
fire?
okay. Well, I was out of town, and as soon as I got back in town, my family were, oh, mother, they had the fire at the villa. Well, they were repainting the trim, and one of the women was using a blowtorch to take the paint off, and she wasn't aware that she caught the insulation on fire. So she went off to eat lunch. No one was there. By the time they got onto it, the place was filled with smoke, and they lost a lot. They lost the upstairs hall. It started in that bathroom, the upstairs bride's room, when the brides changed their clothes. It started in there and took the upstairs hall, and the upstairs middle bedroom, the wallpaper room. It destroyed that valuable wallpaper. And the water destroyed the walnut floor in the Great Hall. That floor had wide planks of walnut. You don't have trees available like that today. And beautiful planked walnut floor, we lost it. Because the water went through the floor and then all the wood became warped. So we had to remove, that was the major loss was that walnut floor in the Great Hall. The rest we could patch, and we got the insurance company paid for a new flooring, but they don't have the wide planks, the beautiful wood of the original floor. So that was sort of a disaster for the villa. But on the other hand, you know what we got from the insurance? We had walls open. We could put in air conditioning. And that was a big, big help, having those walls stripped so we're able to put in air conditioning, because that was a big drawback for summer without air conditioning. So we won some and lost some with that fire. So anyway, I had to give up my floor, but we got air conditioning.
Did you hear any stories from Mrs. Smith about her time there that stick into your mind?
No. We had one of our board members, Dr. Sidney Johnson, that did a lot of the Smith history. In fact, he put together that film that's shown in that first floor bedroom on the history of the Smith family. You should take time to see that film. It shows all the kids and all the crawling over the walls, and the father would flood the terrace for ice skating. The kids ice skated. Think what fun that was. And it showed them going up trellises, and imagine they had a moving camera in the 1920s, late 20s. That's remarkable to have a moving camera. So we have that film and we keep it there and run it. And people love to watch these 6 children crawling around the villa. And he had a English bus, that 2-decker English bus. And it was all, they could run that all through the villa and the terraces. And it was just, and there are pictures of it, but it finally burned up. It was battery operated, and the battery caught fire. There went the English bus. But I think that's an indulgent father that would have a custom English bus made for his children. But what a toy that was. Ugh. Yeah. But there's still, Art Smith's still here, so you can interview him, but any of that, Art will tell it. We had him at the villa speak to us one time about being raised at the villa.
Does he have fond memories of living at the villa?
Oh, yeah. What a childhood that was. Yeah.
Would you like to tell us more about the garden club and sort of the
Oh,
interaction that they had?
we
with the
did run
villa?
into a problem. You see, after the Kaler edition went on the art museum, then the art museum vacated. Well, we stayed on, and then they objected. We were spending too much money. See, the garden club funds should go to the art museum, and we stayed on helping with the garden, and we were spending too much money, and the art museum said no. So we had to, the garden club had to vacate maintaining the gardens. But that's what, about that time is when we created the Friends of Villa Terrace, so they could take over. But that was a legitimate concern of the art museum because we were raising money and it was going to Villa Terrace and not to the art museum. Although we were doing work at the art museum as well, the entrance courtyard. We did the driveway gardens and some of that. We did do, but we were still spending too much money at Villa Terrace, and that wasn't right.
Did you transition into the Friends Association then?
Oh yes, we created that.
Okay.
Yeah, I sit on that Charles Alice Villa Terrace board. That's under the War Memorial Corporation. And we're the ones that got the Friends of Villa Terrace and the Friends of the Charles Alice to handle the affairs of the two museums.
So, were you working at the Milwaukee Garden Club and also doing work for the Friends
Yeah,
of
oh
Villa
sure.
Terrace
Yeah, I'm still active in it.
simultaneously?
I've been a member since 1958, for crying out. Of the garden club. That's a long membership. I've been active all those years, not just in name only. We put on Art in Bloom that the art museum has every year. Our garden club has always done that, Art in Bloom. So it's an active garden club.
What is that? I'm not familiar with the Art in Bloom. Could you?
They do it every spring, usually in April, and now is sort of commercial. They have commercial artists come in and make floral arrangements to coordinate with works of art, sculptures and paintings and so on, all through the museum. And it brings in 14,000 people on a weekend. It's quite popular. It makes money for the art museum.
Did you have a hand in that idea?
Yeah, the first one I made an arrangement, but then they changed the date, and I go to Puerto Vallarta every March. So they were doing it in March, and I couldn't do anymore. Yeah. But I'm very proud of the club for sponsoring that. And our club does the Dan Kiley Garden there in front of the art museum, along Lincoln Memorial Drive. That our garden club does that too. Yeah. We still have active garden clubs. Women work today, so the garden clubbing is as important as it used to be.
Could you tell us what was displayed at the villa when it first opened as an art museum?
The show at the villa. No, we had Bill McGonigal that had changing shows. He always had good, interesting changing shows at the villa, a sequence. I don't know which one we had at the opening. That terrible, I can't remember. We could look it up.
Do you have maybe a favorite show that was at the villa?
Oh, there were a lot of shows. One of them, which I thought was so interesting, he had those Indian chiefs those paintings of Indian chiefs. That was an era, and that brought a lot of people in to see those paintings of Indian chiefs. Yeah, and just decorative arts. He always had interesting decorative arts. We did paperweights and different things.
How about the Kolnick collection?
The Kolnick.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we're lucky that his daughter gave that to the villa. Yeah, it's really, and then all the tools. Some man had some of the tools we got later. So we have that little mini forge and set up there. But yeah, it's really remarkable, his work. And it's sort of a mecca for blacksmiths in the United States to visit to see his collection.
How did the collection come about?
Well, Gretchen, the daughter, gave it to the villa
Okay.
because we had so much work of Kolnick's there at the villa. So she thought we'd be a good one to house it. So we housed this collection. We changed the displays. But I think it's a very interesting feature of the villa, visiting the villa to see all the wrought iron work of Cyril Kolnick. And then when we did the garden, we had the three blacksmiths that made the gate, the Neptune gate on Lincoln Memorial Drive. That was Eric Mabius and Tom Latané from New Richmond and Dan Nauman from Kewaskum. And they collaborated on that Neptune gate that's on the drive. Our garden club bought the fence, the wrought iron fence that's around the villa. That used to be around the reservoir on North Avenue, the North Avenue Reservoir. That used to have this wrought iron fence. Well, we bought it from the county. They wanted to sell it to us, and we paid them for it. We paid them $17,000. At the last minute, they didn't give us all the fence. They just gave us part of the fence so it doesn't completely surround all of the garden. They kept, where'd they put that rest of it? Oh, Summerfest. I think Summerfest we paid for it, but they only gave us part of it. That's a little bit of history that hasn't been discussed.
Was there problems with the county or city not wanting to restore such things as the Villa Terrace or historical places until
Well, they don't
see
have the
what
money.
happens
No,
afterwards?
it's the Friends have to do it. The county doesn't do anything. One of the things we have to do now is lower the driveway. That's going to be thousands of dollars because the drive now has been resurfaced over the years, is now higher than the villa, and the water drains in under the gates at the entrance into the parterre garden. So that's going to be a big job to raise enough money to dig up the drive and put in a new driveway at the right elevation. See, these are things with dear volunteer work. What you get involved with. Oh. But I was fortunate I had a husband that put up with me with my volunteer work. Yeah.
Lots of hours spent volunteering.
Yeah.
I'm married also. I have a wife that puts up with my schoolwork that sometimes takes over.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it's nice to have someone.
Well,
that
my
understands.
family was cooperative. In fact, my sons used to help me with the garden because after the garden club had to leave the villa, the work had to be done. So my sons used to help me. The county would always mow, but that's all they ever did. So my sons would help me plant and prune and all that stuff. So I was glad when we got the Friends of Villa Terrace organized.
Do you still visit the villa often? Or
Oh, I'm there.
get a
I'm there.
chance?
We have that Sopra Mare Cafe. Sunday mornings. So I always go. I'm not always, but I'm there a lot, I feel. And of course, I'm there for board meetings. See, I still sit on that Charles Alice Villa Terrace board, and I sit on the Friends of Villa Terrace board. So I'm there a lot.
Are you happy to see where the villa is today after you've had so much
Yeah.
history there?
Yes,
You've
I
seen
know.
it in
Well, I was very
different,
pleased. We had to pay for the resurfacing of the rear terrace where all the weddings take place. That brick was disintegrating. It was dangerous. So the Friends of Villa Terrace had to lift it all and put in new brick. Which reminds me, I really didn't appreciate the Italian features of the villa until the Bartolottis were there. They were catering something. And I went through with the Bartolottis. They could not get over how authentic that villa is, how things were imported from Italy. The fireplaces, imported. All the spandrels around the terrace, all imported. Everything was in the stone, the tiles, everything was imported from Italy. That makes it the most authentic Italian villa in the country, because they are lovely, lovely Italian villas, but they're copies. These have authentic Italian features. Yeah. I never really realized that until the Bartolottas went through and they knew where this came from. Oh my, it was interesting.
Smiths must have really enjoyed their time
Oh,
in Italy
yes.
to create
Yeah,
something like this.
they lost one of their girls. Lost a daughter quite early. But no, Art and Ted Smith lived in River Hills, and Art out in Bayside. I used to know the wives, but they're all gone, and just Art's left.
We will be talking to Art.
Oh, sure.
I believe this Wednesday or Thursday. Coming. Very interesting.
Yeah,
Can't wait.
we'll ask him about that London bus. I bet they had a ball with that. And the ice skating on the back terrace. But I think she had her kids working on that garden. Yeah, I'm sure she did.
You have a first-hand account of how much work needs to be put into the garden.
I know
Can
it.
you imagine what it would be like for a family or having helped someone to help out with the garden?
Yeah.
Do you have any stories about the upkeep of the garden in the earlier years before?
No, other than it's just weeding and pruning. Weeding and pruning. So I've done a lot of that. Yeah, I've always been interested in gardening, so studied it quite a bit. So I'm a landscape consultant or something like that. I have a title because I've gone to school. I went to Madison to take courses. But I'm not a landscape architect. But we have on our board is Marguerite Harvey, that is a landscape architect. And she has a fabulous garden in Bayside. And she's on our board. So she works with Dennis, and they're both landscape architects. So Marguerite Harvey's has helped us considerably.
Is gardening something you've always had a passion for since you were?
Well, I was just raised in California where my parents both gardened. See, my mother did the floral, and my father did the fruit trees and the vegetables. And would you believe I was raised with apricots, early peaches, late peaches, plums, Royal Anne cherries, Bing cherries, every grape you can think of, and blackberries, raspberries, currants, pomegranates, walnuts, almonds, olives. Imagine being raised with all that. So I had I was well fed through my childhood. I was raised in San Joaquin Valley, because with the irrigation and all, we could have all those fruit trees. But no pears and no apples. They needed colder weather. They had to be raised in the foothills, so we didn't have pears or apples, but all the rest of the pit fruits we had. Yeah.
Is that why you decided to go to school for
No, I just did it through garden clubbing. It was a
Garden
garden club course.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But my parents were gardeners, so. So my father would be up early in the morning before he went to work, irrigating or pruning or picking cherries. Yes, in fact, it took me many years to be able to eat fruit when I moved this part of the country because the fruit never tasted like it was supposed to. See, fruit that's been ripened on the tree has so much more flavor than fruit that's picked green and shipped. And it took me a long time to ever eat fruit here. I think they're getting better now. But in the early years, I always thought the fruit was so tasteless.
What brought you to Milwaukee from?
Johnson Controls. My husband they sought him out, wanted him, so. But he loved milk. This is an interesting thing. He was with U.S. Steel, and he was in sales engineering. Not sales as such, but he traveled to the major cities. Every week he went to some major city. But he always liked Milwaukee. I thought it was fascinating that he liked Milwaukee. In fact, coming back from California, he made a trip to make sure we came through to see Milwaukee and to have dinner at Mater's and take the Clipper across to Michigan. And it was an absolute fluke. The Johnson Controls came to him. He didn't apply at Johnson. They came to him. So it was an easy transition for the family because we'd all been to Milwaukee. And he liked it. And that interesting. I thought that was different.
What about Milwaukee? Do you think struck a chord with your husband?
Yes, he just liked the city clean, very clean. Good fire department, good police department, and school system, and yeah. And it was on the lake. We really liked it. Yeah. You're not a native then.
I am.
You are.
Yeah, I was born in Milwaukee. I've been here my whole life.
Well, you know, if someone's tearing down Milwaukee, it's usually a native. Those of us that live someplace else are the ones that like it.
I like Milwaukee. There's a lot that Milwaukee has to offer. Different neighborhoods and such.
Yeah.
It seems like it's becoming a better and better place to live.
They have a good park system. They've always had a good park system. Yeah. Okay.
It's a shame some of the parks, after so many years,
Yeah.
come into disrepair.
Well, they're bringing them back. I used to live close to Doctor's Park, and they're trying to bring it back. I drove by the other day. I noticed they're having a picnic of some sort benefit for Doctor's Park. Now they're getting a Friends of Doctor's Park to revive it. Just like what the Lake Park Friends have done for the Lake Park, I think it's remarkable in cleaning out all the garlic mustard and planting new things. I think it's great to have these Friends groups to take over where the government can't do it anymore. You know, everybody's, won't spend the money on it. Yeah. Anyway, I've got a lot of stuff here for you to go through if you want to.
Sure, we can look through some of the images that you brought. Maybe we'll bring up some more stories or something we can talk about.
Okay. I don't have the garden club file. I thought I had it. That was our friend's 20th anniversary. It has a little bit of dates. And then we made. I'm sorry I got these wet. I don't know how I did, but. Oh, and this was the colonial homes. They had this in.
Oh, that's great.
I don't know. And a brief history of Villa Terrace and the fire. And here was our Dennis's garden. I think he gave you that, I imagine.
I have. Let's see here. I don't think we've seen this one. When the garden was going to be redesigned, did you look around for
No,
different
originally
designers?
they had the alley of maples, the tall maples that died from the wet garden, and then they had a bed of gravel and hedges here. Then they had something over there. It wasn't that spectacular.
Was Dennis picked?
Yeah,
By the board?
that's Dennis's design.
Were there other designers that
No,
were interested, or was he?
No, just Dennis did
just
it.
Dennis? How was that? How did that relationship come about? That Dennis was.
Well, because we needed him. And he was, at that time, and still a premier landscape architect. He does all that work over at Madison, that Allen Centennial Garden. And he's worked on a lot of the major gardens here. Let's see. That's what we were doing. See the heavy equipment?
Oh wow.
Yeah. But this is all the garden. See, this is the way it looked at that time. All that had to be removed. Look at that. And here's our Villa Chacona in Lake Lugano. Here's another fire article. There's an early budget. Oh, this is the only picture. I have other things that are stored at the villa. Here's my garden club. This is about the time when we were early days before the garden went in. I'm a new kid on the block, because you can see they're all gone. That's our budget for the garden.
You had to become very close friends with other ladies in the garden
Oh,
club.
sure.
outside, even outside of the.
Yeah, oh yeah, there were some movers and shakers. I have to get another file. I'm sorry. I just thought I had this file available. It's not. Some of the early photographs. I have quite a few from the early. See, this is like 1966. These pictures. Okay. But you can glean quite a bit from this.
Yeah, there's a lot of information here. Do you mind if we capture some photos of some of these? Would we be able to scan any of these documents?
What?
Would we be able to scan any of these?
Oh, sure.
On a scanner?
Yeah.
We don't have a scanner
And
with
listen,
us.
I have to unload my files. I've got a lot of files, and I have to start unloading. My kids won't do it, so I have to start throwing out stuff.
Do you think before we leave today, maybe we could set up a time that we could meet again with a scanner and scan
Yeah.
some of your documents?
Yeah, I don't know if I want them back. Okay, you can scan them.
What you said you don't want them back? Or?
I don't know, maybe I should keep them for a file at the villa.
Yeah, should we give them to
Yeah,
maybe
maybe I
John?
should, yeah,
and
so
he
they
can bring
have-
them back to the villa.
So there were quite a few articles on it. And here are raising the money. Look at all the people that donated. Yeah, this one friend's foundation gave $25,000.
Wow.
My first, it's a cute story, off the record. This one, Dennis said, you should talk to this lady. He was doing her garden. And so I invited her over to see the garden, of what we were doing and talking about raising the money. And she was a nice lady. And so later, and she said, well, she talked it over with her husband, sent a check. So anyway, I don't know why my husband looked at the mail that came that day, and he said, oh, here. Oh, $25,000, how exciting. He said, look again, $250,000. That was the lead that came from Dennis. You know, it's I never would have thought that they would give that much, but $250,000, not $25,000. I thought that was a funny story. Okay. Well, I can go on my way, can't I?
You would, unless you would like to talk with Delphine together. And
Yeah,
maybe
is Grace Graves here?
No.
Or you're going? Okay. I left all the artifacts to Delphine, the furniture. You know, she was in Collectors Corners, and then the Antiquarian Society acquired things as well. They did a lot to help the furnishing of the villa. Yeah, it was an exciting time for everybody.
It's completely up to you if you'd like to talk some more, maybe with Delphine and maybe share some accounts of being at the villa together, or
Well,
if you have other things to do, then that's fine also.
Well, I don't know what I can do. I think you've got the, I don't know what this is. Here's another article. Other people have written the history of the villa too. we do a lot now with children. That's the latest thing to raise funds. You have to have a children's program. So Leon Travanti, the professor's doing a children's art program that's very popular with the kids and the parents. And he has an art show with their work of arts that they put on display in November. So we do that. Okay.
Let me go ask and see.
See,
Kelly's over there. I'll be right back. Did you have any that you wanted to ask? Is that all the questions?
Yeah, I noticed you have a lot of the old garden club scrapbooks down
Yeah.
at the building
Yes.
there. It's pretty
yeah, they're
cool.
there.
Pretty amazing
Yeah,
stuff
we
there.
they let us keep them there, and I have one in my trunk right now that should be there. We used to keep a scrapbook, and so that you saw that file.
I went through all of them. Yeah, it was pretty neat to go back through there because they're from the 50s and 60s.
Well, in those days, we had more well-to-do people that belonged. You know, Mrs. Hersfeld and, you know, and the Vogels and all those. And so they could, when we would put on a project, we could usually raise money. Well, the fact we got $16,000 to acquire Hermes
Yeah.
and that pedestal. That's remarkable for a garden club to
Sure. Yeah.
do. And this was 1966 money.
Yeah. Right. That goes went a lot further, I'm sure.
Yeah, and so many of our members donate at least $100. That's a lot of money in 1966. Yeah, but today women are working, so you just don't have quite the same membership
Sure.
that we used to have. When I was president, we had 174 members. Now we can barely make 100. So it's different today.
But you did stuff all over the city. Like there's one book where there's like community gardens on 22nd and
Oh, sure. Oh,
Greenfield that
yes.
you helped with.
Oh,
I'm
and
sure other places.
I
around
know,
town.
we used to go to the Corps and give them plants, you know, like hostas and things to plant. We had projects all through the city.
Yeah.
And we really did a lot of horticulture and volunteerism and conservation. You know, we really had quite a program, but we don't have the membership today to do all that we used to do.
Well, and I see that there was a lot of slides with flower arrangements,
Yeah.
and that seemed to be like a big thing back then.
Oh, yes.
I don't know.
It's coming back with this Art and Bloom, though.
Okay.
Yeah, Art and Bloom has brought it back. So we now have quite a few good flower arrangers. It went for a while that I was the only one interested in flower arranging.
Right.
So I used to do, you know, programs on the mechanics of flower arranging and that sort of thing. But now it's really come back. I'm so pleased.
Yeah, it seemed like it was really a big part of the garden club.
Yeah.
So when I found these slides, I was thinking, oh great, we're gonna have all these pictures of all people and everything, and they're all flower arrangements. You know?
Yeah, we're back to doing the flower arranging though.
That's neat.
Is your tape set ready?
I'm stopping right now.
Did you ramble as much as I did there?
Jim used to have the period rooms.
No, I didn't
Yeah,
go into that
they
yet.
into the Amish and what they.
Oh, at the villa you used to have like the federal room.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yes, they used to do a lot of that.
But then, well, the federal room is still there,
Yes,
pretty much intact. But the other furniture had been moved back to the art museum,
yes.
so we don't.
But the shaker room that went back, people always miss that shaker room.
Yes, that all the shaker furniture was there.
Yeah, there's
Well,
a
what
pic-
was in the Colnick rooms before the Colnick stuff was there?
that is maybe the shaker room.
What, let's see, in the far, the one facing
She said that she's not worried.
on the east side, what was in that room? Isn't it hard to remember
I
what was
know.
there? Yeah, so we had a shaker room, and the Federal Room, and then we had a, what did we have there? I can't remember. You see, that's what
Yeah.
happens.
But
You're
the
as
wall,
old as
you
we
tell,
are.
I gave the information about the paper, how we lost that valuable paper in the
The
wallpaper.
wallpaper, yeah, I did mention
Yeah,
that
and I had a
too.
couple of fire articles.
I didn't say the,
Yeah, I had
I
this,
still can't remember the name
yeah,
of the
French,
Fortuny.
yeah,
I
French.
couldn't remember Fortuny.
Yeah.
Fortuny made the wallpaper. And many of the draperies are in Fortuny style, if that means anything to you.
Not Fortuny, no,
anyhow,
that's
how
not
did we
Fortuny
do?
wallpaper.
Good.
Wonderfully.
What about the date room? You know, before they brought the paneling over.
That was just plaster, but they brought, the art museum did that.
They did.
Yeah, they brought Mrs. Dake's room over.
But the furniture was pretty much the same. They brought over that other
Yeah,
chest.
Yeah,
But it was the same except without paneling.
Right. Okay.
but I always liked Mrs. Smith or her love seats in the base, down in the basement, those blue
Oh,
velvet
that
ones.
faced each other
Yeah,
at the
I know, but we can't
fireplace.
put them up, but I always liked them because they were so different in blue velvet.
They had, they were like a love seat, and they had pegged, the arms were pegged, so they dropped down, so you could take a nap. You know, we love those sofas.
I found out yet.
Well, are we finished? Or what are we up to now?
Well, if they can have some of that. I have a lot of files.
Oh, you brought things.
Yeah,
Oh, I
of
see.
the articles.
Oh, and I do too, and I did an archival history of the villa one time, wrote it out,
Yeah,
but I don't know where it is now. And that's the trouble. I have tons and reams of notes,
what I did.
but I can't quite put my finger on them to tell someone they're there.
No, I just have miles of
We have a lot
files.
of that at the villa.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen
I'm
the
sure.
notes.
Yeah,
before,
miles of
so
files.
We have that.
Oh, that's what you're looking through.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, just finish, use this and just leave it at the villa. This is on those that contributed. I even have that.
Thank you both for agreeing to talk with us today.
Well, thank you for coming.
Immensely helpful.
I hope you had a good time too, you three.
We are learning about the villa more each day as we go on. This is our
And I even told them
Seventh
how
day.
we offended the ladies of Milwaukee with Hermes.
Oh.
Remember
Yes,
the
well,
static?
You're good at all that.
Yeah, that
garden business.
static we got with Hermes. Ah! When I pulled that shroud, I pulled that cord,
And
the
there was
shroud
some
went up,
naked-
and there he was in all of his glory. And we got a lot of static from Collector's Corner and all those people.
Oh, I know.
Okay, we'll just put this back at the villa or someplace.
Thank you so much.
Well, I hope you have a successful project. And I know talking to Barbara will be absolutely wonderful. And she'll fill in any gaps you have.
I remember when she was a new kid on the block.
Yes, when you weren't in on that, but she taught the docent classes at Villa Terrace that I took as well as at the art museum. You know, I'd go to the art museum in the morning every week and then to Villa Terrace in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And that was what you had to do for a year to be a docent in those days. So while Beth was busy with the garden club, I was being a docent at Villa Terrace.
I never could be a docent. I always wanted to be a docent at the art museum because I love art.
Well, why? Well, you were so busy doing other things.
Yeah, I would have loved to be. But that's a good education.
Oh, it was I said to Katia, the education of my life. To
I
do
got to give a piece of art to the art museum. It's still, they've been hanging there for 7 years.
Wonderful. Which one did you?
Oh, it's a abstract expressions,
Oh, okay.
Richard Poussin art. They didn't have one in their collection, and the curator got wind that I had it. And I said, well, I was leaving it in my will. But he didn't, he wanted it now.
How about now, Beth?
Yeah.
Right.
So I gave it up. I thought it would be the center points of my decor at St. John's, you know, at the tower. I could see it above my fireplace or whatever.
But now you can see it in the art.
Now
Well, good
everybody
for
can
you.
see it at the art museum.
Well, that was very generous.
It is.
And that's how I met Beth through all this.
Yeah.
And she's been a grand friend.
Oh, yeah. Well, my life started when I started the Friends of Villa Terrace. Because that was a terrible void from the time the art museum moved out.
Yes.
And then just some people, stayed on with no organization.
Well, I didn't go into that. I told Katya I'd rather not address that. That was not a good time. So I didn't.
No, as I
Wish
said, my
to
kids
talk
helped
about
me
it.
plant and prune and
We'll
weed.
get it from Barbara Brownlee,
Yes.
right? We'll
Yes.
get the other side of the story, so to speak, right?
She'll have a lot of stories and told better than anybody could ever find.
Well, it was a pleasure being here this morning, so thank you again.
Well, thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for your
Happy to
interest
help.
in Villa, our life.
Yes,
absolutely.
Very nice meeting you, Beth.
Well, I'm so glad you came here.